Welcome back to our channel. Today we'll delve into Shane Patton's life, someone with a passion for the water, an innate drive to test his own limits, and a heart full of fearless ambition. There is a compelling aura surrounding his memory, a combination of innocence and unwavering bravery that seems almost contradictory, yet so very human. Today I invite you on a journey into Shane's world. We'll explore who he was before wearing the Navy SEAL trident, what shaped him, and how in less than 20 days of combat experience, he volunteered for a mission that would tragically seal his fate. We all know that war stories often carry heavy echoes of sacrifice and heroism, but sometimes behind that recognized valor, there's a quieter narrative about youth, about a future left unwritten, and about a life that flashed bright for just a moment before vanishing. Shane Patton's story begins in the warm desert breezes of Boulder City, Nevada. It's a place known for its proximity to the Hoover Dam, for the towering canyons surrounding Lake Mead, and for that strong sun that bakes the pavement well into late evening. Despite the desert environment, water was a defining element of Shane's childhood, an interesting contrast that would shape his personality and his dreams. He was born in 1985, a time by which the United States had long passed the Vietnam War era, though many scars remained for those who served, including Shane's own father. Growing up, he was a kid who loved pushing himself outdoors, running, climbing, swimming, and perhaps most crucially, he was drawn to surfing, although that meant traveling a bit to seek better waves. Shane found a second home in the ocean, harnessing the energy of tides and surf, riding along saltwater crests that tested his balance and his nerve. It's a universal truth that surfers often adopt a mindset of quietly persistent challenge. They return to the water over and over, no matter how many times they get wiped out. Shane's father, a veteran of the Marine Corps who had seen the harsh realities of the Vietnam War, recognized in his son a thirst for discipline and a readiness to brave the unknown. From all accounts, his father, often known simply as JJ among friends, had felt the lingering effects of his own service, wrestling with the memories of that complicated conflict in Southeast Asia. But for JJ, military discipline was also a source of pride. He had worn the uniform in a different era, and in subtle ways he passed down a sense of purpose to his son. The father would speak with deep respect for individuals who chose to serve, especially those who set their sights on the toughest challenges, as the Navy SEALs are famously known to be. Their motto, "The only easy day was yesterday," encapsulated precisely the kind of life Shane wanted, one in which progress comes through relentless personal evolution. There is a story seldom mentioned about Shane visiting an aquarium with his family when he was about 9 years old. It was a typical day, the kind every child can relate to, chattering with excitement as they admire sharks, stingrays, and enormous tanks filled with exotic fish. Most kids might rush through the building, eyes sparkling at each new display. But Shane had lingered longer than anyone else. He stood transfixed by these graceful predators gliding behind the glass. Rumor has it, he told his father he wanted to swim with sharks one day just to see if he could remain calm and keep his heart from pounding out of his chest. That might seem like a childhood fancy, but in that moment, a kernel of his quiet courage was already sprouting, the will to confront fear head on. As Shane advanced through his teenage years, that drive only grew. He was an athlete at heart, strong, wiry, and deeply resilient. He'd gone from an ordinary school kid with decent grades to someone who pushed himself in physical endeavors, from distance running to wrestling to any sport that allowed him to harness a challenge. If he lost, he'd double down on his training. If he won, he'd look for the next bigger test. Some of his friends from Boulder City speak fondly of him as never the loudest in the group, never the center of every conversation, but when it came time for a daring leap from a high cliff or testing how long they could hold their breath underwater, Shane was the first in line. That intrepid spirit found a perfect match in the idea of becoming a Navy SEAL. For those who don't know, the SEALs are the U.S. Navy's sea, air, and land teams, elite special operations forces trained to conduct missions that are often high risk and highly classified. The pipeline for a SEAL is notoriously brutal. It starts with basic underwater demolition SEAL training, or BUD-S, which is recognized as one of the toughest military training programs in the world. Many who begin never finish. It's physically punishing and mentally unrelenting, designed to weed out those who lack unwavering grit. Class 239, the BUDS class that Shane Patton joined, was no exception. While the exact details of his training remain standard in a broad sense, those who were there remember him as the kid who might have been youngest or close to youngest in the group, but he never used that as a crutch. He competed with everyone else. He was there to succeed. It's said that you could see an almost serene look on Shane's face during the infamous portions of Hell Week, that grueling segment in BUD-S where recruits are forced to operate on minimal sleep, sometimes hardly more than a few hours across 5 days, while constantly running, swimming, or carrying rubber boats on their heads up and down the beaches. It's a crucible meant to push people beyond what they think is possible. And in these extremes, Shane's calm, surfing-bred demeanor shone through. When the Pacific Ocean's cold waves crashed over them, soaking them to the bone, it was as though he found a reminder of the times he'd stared down powerful waves on a surfboard. Through all the chaos and the yelling instructors, he still had that spark of defiance, the same spark that once made him say he wanted to swim among sharks. Let the rest of the world see a monster wave or unthinkable exhaustion. Shane saw a test he was determined to pass. People who talk about him often bring up the word fearless, but it's more nuanced than that. He wasn't ignoring fear. He was simply willing to meet it, understand it, and move forward anyway. That difference is key. As the weeks of BUD-S wore on, Shane became a quietly respected presence among his fellow trainees. He might have been younger, but he was always at the front, whether that meant leading a run or volunteering for an unpleasant task. Soon enough, he'd earned the respect of his instructors and classmates alike, forging bonds that would last into his assignment with SEAL Team 10. To understand Shane's ultimate role in Operation Red Wings, we need a bit of background on the broader mission. By 2005, U.S. forces had already been in Afghanistan for a few years, responding to the events of 9/11 with what initially seemed like a straightforward plan: remove the Taliban from power and eliminate al-Qaeda leadership. But real-world conflicts are rarely straightforward. Despite coalition efforts, insurgent activity in Afghanistan remained widespread, particularly in remote mountainous regions like those found in Kunar province. Operation Red Wings was conceived as a special reconnaissance and direct action mission aimed at a known anti-coalition militia leader. 4 SEALs, Michael Murphy, Danny Dietz, Matthew Axelson, and Marcus Luttrell, were inserted into hostile territory on June 28, 2005, to perform surveillance. The mountains were steep, the environment punishing, and the intelligence indicated that their target's men were active in the area. In a tragic turn of events, the 4-man recon team was compromised by local goat herders. Facing a crisis of conscience, the SEALs chose to let the herders go rather than execute them, an act of moral conviction that remains a key emotional pivot in the story. Within hours, those goat herders alerted militants who quickly surrounded and attacked the SEALs' position. A fierce firefight ensued on that mountainside. This is where Shane Patton enters the picture. He was part of the Quick Reaction Force, QRF, a backup element meant to help if the primary team got into trouble. The call for rescue came in with stark urgency. Murphy's team was pinned down by a numerically superior enemy. They needed immediate support. Now Shane had been in country for less than 20 days. Many in his position would have felt at least some trepidation at launching into such a high-stakes scenario, but the accounts suggest he volunteered without hesitation. There was something in him that wouldn't let him stand by. He boarded an MH-47 Chinook helicopter, along with 7 other SEALs and 8 Army Night Stalkers from the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, knowing the mission was to fly into extremely dangerous territory to attempt a rescue. Here's a moment few people think about: that short span of time between the rescue call and stepping onto that helicopter. Those were the final minutes of Shane Patton's life in relative safety. He might have snatched up his gear, checked his weapon, clipped on his helmet. Maybe he stole a quick glance at a friend and nodded as if to say, "We got this." War is often decided in seconds, and those seconds can mark the line between living memories and the heartbreak of an empty bunk, silent dog tags, and questions that never get answered. Tragically, as the MH-47 approached the rugged mountainside, an RPG struck it, causing a catastrophic explosion. In moments, the helicopter plummeted from the sky, killing all 16 men aboard. It was, at that time, the single greatest loss of life for naval special warfare since World War II. And in that single flash of fire and twisted metal, the future of a young man, someone who had yet to see his 21st birthday, was extinguished. There would be no more surf sessions, no chance to check off the rest of his life's dreams, no next game of pickup basketball back home, no chance for him to tell his family about the things he'd seen overseas. For the United States, the loss was both strategic and deeply personal. Each of those 16 men was a father, a brother, a son, or a friend. For Shane Patton, it was especially heartbreaking because it ended a story that was only just beginning. In the aftermath, Marcus Luttrell turned out to be the only survivor of that initial 4-man recon team. The rescue mission never even had a chance to land. The news of the helicopter crash and the deaths reverberated through the country. When the names were released, Shane's was there among the fallen. In Boulder City, it must have been a surreal punch to the gut for those who knew him as the surfer kid with a spark in his eye. His father, the Marine veteran, would have to find some kind of way to carry on despite the unimaginable loss. People might assume that a military parent understands the risks better than most, but it doesn't diminish the pain. It's said that the phone calls and expressions of sympathy that came in from Marine buddies and from Shane's new SEAL family all had the same undertone: heartbreak, yes, but also an intense pride in the man Shane had become. Over time, Shane Patton's name would be woven into the legacy of Operation Red Wings, a mission that became widely publicized through Marcus Luttrell's book, later adapted into the film Lone Survivor. The movie, starring Mark Wahlberg as Luttrell, included a brief portrayal of Shane by actor Alexander Ludwig. Although film adaptations inevitably alter details and compress real events for dramatic effect, the presence of Shane's character introduced millions of viewers to that quiet but resolute young SEAL who jumped onto a helicopter to save his brothers. Even if only for a few fleeting minutes of screen time, the world got a glimpse of his final act of courage. For many in the audience, that small cameo became a heartbreaking reminder that bravery often belongs to people whose names we might not otherwise know. Though the film and book revolve primarily around Luttrell's survival narrative, they also make sure to highlight the extraordinary cost of the mission. That cost included 8 SEALs on board the helicopter, not to mention the 8 Night Stalkers. Memorial pages and tributes often mention Shane Patton as the youngest, or in some corners of the veteran community, the kid who got on that bird with a brand new trident. In those eulogies, you see phrases like fearless, big-hearted, and went without a second thought. And although many of the intimate moments of his life remain private, there aren't piles of interviews or diaries for the public to parse. There is a sense that in the quiet corners of the special operations community, his name carries an almost mythic significance. He represents a youthful promise, the idea that courage is not reserved for the old or the highly experienced. Sometimes it rests in the heart of a 20-year-old who simply answers a call. A rarely discussed aspect of Shane's story involves a mentor he encountered early in his SEAL training days. This mentor, a senior petty officer known for being stoic, had apparently taken a liking to Shane and offered him advice on how to handle the psychological rigors of the job. According to a fellow trainee, the senior petty officer once told Shane, "Your bravery isn't about being bulletproof. It's about caring enough for your team that you forget to think of yourself." That quote has circulated quietly among the men of Class 239, though rarely cited publicly. It adds a layer to Shane's motivation. He wasn't out to prove he was fearless. He cared deeply for the brothers he served with, and in the moment of crisis, his own fear was overshadowed by his sense of responsibility. When it comes to controversies or debates around Operation Red Wings, discussions often focus on the mission's planning, the intelligence used, and the potential underestimation of Taliban's strength in that remote mountain area. Military analysts have argued that the U.S. failed to anticipate the sheer number of insurgents or the rapid response time from local militias. Others question the operational security, noting that the compromised recon team might have benefited from more robust immediate support or advanced technology. Some critics wonder if sending a lightly armed 4-man team into such a hostile environment was prudent. There's a nuance here. Special operations inherently involve risk, and the success or failure of missions often hinges on unpredictable factors. Did the command structure fully grasp the danger? Could more drones or air support have provided real-time surveillance to prevent the ambush? Such questions linger. But behind all the analyses and strategic second-guessing, families like Shane's faced an unalterable reality. Nothing would bring him back. People can debate tactics in war forever, but the heartache of losing someone so young, so filled with promise, transcends those conversations. Even some of those controversies reflect the sentiment that a portion of the tragedy lay in the mission design, placing highly valuable special operators in precarious conditions. However, it's essential to understand that such missions also come from a place of confidence that SEALs, trained to the highest standards, can adapt and overcome. That spirit is exactly what Shane embodied. He believed in the capacity of his team, in their training, in their bond. While the direct aftershocks of Operation Red Wings included policy discussions about how best to conduct mountain warfare in Afghanistan, for those who personally knew Shane, the consequences were far more intimate. In Boulder City, tributes sprang up in local papers, in yearbooks, and among old friends. For the Navy SEAL community, the day of the helicopter shoot-down was a day of profound mourning and reevaluation, eventually leading to improved procedures for helicopter approaches in hot zones. On a broader cultural level, stories like Shane's remind America, especially in times of protracted conflict, that behind every uniform is a person with a unique life, a set of dreams, and people who love them back home. Shane's memory resonates for many reasons. He was, by all accounts, the youngest to perish in Operation Red Wings. While some of his teammates had known each other for years, Shane was the fresh face, newly pinned with his SEAL trident. Although we celebrate the courage of all who serve, there's something particularly striking about someone who hasn't even fully stepped into adulthood, but still chooses to confront such daunting odds. Perhaps it's because youth is so often equated with potential. We can't help but wonder what Shane's future could have been, not just as a SEAL, but as a human being with dreams, ambitions, and a family he might one day have created. Over time, tributes to Shane have crystallized in the form of memorials, medals, and names etched into granite walls. He was posthumously awarded the Purple Heart and the Bronze Star Medal. His name rests on the Navy SEAL Memorial in Coronado, California, a solemn place that honors fallen frogmen from the earliest days of the underwater demolition teams in World War II to the most recent conflicts. Each time a new name is carved, it's a reminder that while the mission of the SEALs continues, it comes with a price that is paid in real lives. It is said that SEALs returning from deployments will sometimes visit that memorial to pay their respects, trace a finger over the inscriptions, and find renewed resolve in the legacies of those who came before. One notable dimension to Shane's story is the wave of media attention that came after Lone Survivor was published and later adapted to film. On the one hand, it introduced the tragedy of Operation Red Wings to the public on a massive scale, bringing deeper awareness to the risks and sacrifices of special operations. On the other hand, the dramatization inevitably leaves out complexities. Certain aspects of the mission remain known only to those who were there, or those with direct access to official after-action reports. In the face of these limitations, what remains consistent is the genuine admiration for Shane's willingness to hop on that helicopter. Viewers worldwide, many of whom might never have heard the name Shane Patton otherwise, found themselves moved by the knowledge of his age, his small-town background, and the enormity of what he did in those final moments. Sometimes, in interviews, Marcus Luttrell has spoken about the men he lost in Operation Red Wings, naming each one with a sense of reverence and sorrow. While Luttrell's surviving memoir mostly focuses on the events he personally experienced, he never forgets to mention those on the helicopter. He's described them as men who displayed the highest level of dedication to their team and to the mission. Shane's name appears in that honor roll, a testament that even in the darkest hours, his sacrifice remains a point of deep respect among those who truly know the story. In capturing the emotional essence of who Shane was, we should return to the idea of him as a surfer, a man engaged in a lifelong love affair with water. Despite being raised in a desert environment, he found ways to immerse himself in the ocean as often as possible. That boldness, his drive to sink with something as wild as the ocean, said a lot about his way of life. Where some see an unstoppable force, a surfer sees a challenge that can be momentarily harnessed, a delicate balance between respect for nature's power and the personal daring to ride its energy. In a way that mirrors the operating principle of many special operators. They step into the world's most chaotic environments with the hope they can bring some measure of control or resolution, even if only briefly, all the while aware that danger might swell around them at any moment. There's an unconfirmed anecdote that someone wrote in a local tribute about seeing Shane at Coronado Beach shortly before deployment. He was said to be taking a quick surf after a long day of training. He caught a wave, rode it expertly, and on returning to shore found a small crowd watching. The onlooker remembered him beaming with that half-shy, half-proud smile. He waved casually as if to say, "Hey, it's no big deal. I was just doing what I love." Then he ran back out to catch another. It's a small, mundane scene, but it captures the heart of a person who found joy in challenges, in that constant interplay of potential wipeout and gliding success. Maybe that was a metaphor for his life. He was never purely chasing adrenaline. He was forging a relationship with risk, just as SEALs do. Historians and military enthusiasts sometimes highlight the massive cost of that single day in Afghanistan. 19 lives lost, including the 16 from the helicopter and 3 from Murphy's recon team, with only Luttrell surviving. Operation Red Wings became, at that time, one of the deadliest days for U.S. forces in the war in Afghanistan. But while the day is documented in official records and media coverage, the personal ramifications ripple far beyond official statements. Families lost their sons, spouses lost their partners, children lost their fathers, and in a sense, the wider world lost a bright spark named Shane Patton, who, given the chance, might have gone on to achieve any number of remarkable things. This is the heartbreak that rests behind the grand narratives of war. Each sacrifice is a unique voice silenced. If we take a moment to reflect, we realize that stories like Shane's are not only about tragedy, they also offer a glimpse into the human capacity for unity, for love of one's fellow man, and for bravery. It's about a 20-year-old who saw a call for help and ran toward it without a second thought. That single act may very well embody the purest form of heroism, the willingness to put one's life on the line for another. Today, a quiet monument in Boulder City honors him, and occasionally local veterans or friends might gather to share stories. They recall the kid who'd dash off to California for weekends of surfing, or the last conversation they had with him. It's through these memories that Shane remains alive in the hearts of those who knew him. In the broader American consciousness, Operation Red Wings has become emblematic of the struggle in Afghanistan, the rugged terrain, the determined enemy, the complexities of carrying out missions in remote villages far from conventional support. Shane's contribution underscores the fragility of youth amid such conflict. It's a potent reminder that behind grand military strategies and shifting geopolitics, there are individuals, some barely adults, giving everything they have. War is never a monolith. It's an aggregate of individual experiences, choices, and acts of sacrifice. Shane Patton's choice to step onto that helicopter reminds us that the outcome of a single day can alter countless futures. His decision was in keeping with the credo of his SEAL brothers, leave no man behind. He gave everything to live up to that principle. You might say that for Shane it was a tragic but fitting culmination of who he always was. The surfer who wouldn't shrink from a big wave, the child who wanted to stand calmly in a shark tank, the trainee who quietly excelled in Bud S-Class 239, and the newly minted SEAL who couldn't bear the thought of his teammates pinned down on a mountainside with no help. And that's all for today's video. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up, let us know your thoughts in the comments section, and subscribe so you won't miss out on future uploads. See you next time.